Good afternoon, everyone. Warm greetings to all the participants and expert assessors. I welcome you all to the final round of the 4th RGNUL Sports and Entertainment Law Mediation Competition 2022. I, Aditya Jain, will be your room coordinator for the round. Kindly let me know if you face any issues. On behalf of the Center for Alternative Dispute Resolution (RGNUL), I welcome Ms. Amy Dharamshi, Mr. Vidushpat Singhania, Ms. Rima Soni, and Mr. Abhishek Anand as the expert assessors for the round and thank them for graciously accepting our invitation. I would hereby request all the participants to keep their videos on during the entire round and switch on their microphone only when they need to speak something. I will be keeping the time for the session, which will be 60 minutes, and will remind the teams 3 times. When 30 minutes, that is half time, are remaining, when 10 minutes are remaining, and when 5 minutes are remaining, by either muting myself or by using the chat box option. I request the participants to strictly adhere to the time limit of 60 minutes. Excess time taken can lead to penalty points. With the due permission of the assessors, we may now begin the rounds.
Sure, let's start.
I'm the first mediator. Should I start?
Apologies. A quick clarification. The mediation round for this round will be 70 minutes. The total duration of the round for this round will be 70 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. With that, should I start? All right.
Can you just give us your details as well so that we can plug it into our sheet?
Sure, sir. I am TC10 mediator.
Okay.
I am TC10.
Sorry, TC16 mediator. I'm so sorry.
Okay, all right.
So sorry.
TC16. Yeah, all right.
I'm the client for TC10. TC24. TC20. I'm so sorry. TC24.
Excuse me, guys. I am confused now. Which TC are you addressing? So, okay, council requesting TC50.
No, I'll write in the chat box if that works.
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you.
I'll clarify again. I'm TC16.
Okay.
Should I start? All right. Very good evening. It's a pleasure seeing both the parties present here today. I am Teresi Shroff, a certified mediator trained to assist in resolving disputes just like the one we find ourselves today. I shall be serving as one of the 2 mediators today for today's mediation proceedings. It's a matter of great pleasure for me to be assisting you in today's session. I sincerely believe that through today's mediation session, we will be able to reach an amicable solution favorable for both the parties. The objective of today's session is not to pin the blame on one party, but rather to work towards a workable solution. Furthermore, I would like to thank both the parties for taking out the time and investing it in the process of mediation, thereby trusting mediation as an alternate dispute resolution mechanism, especially on a hot Monday afternoon like today. I would like to iterate that in my capacity as the mediator today, I shall be acting as a neutral facilitator and not either as a judge or a colored entity. My job today is to expedite communication and through a solution-based approach and not to pass or suggest a favor judgment. I am not previously acquainted with either of the 2 parties. All conversations between me and the disputants will be held under strict rules of confidentiality and will not go outside the ambit of this room. Except, of course, in cases if you confess or allege to a criminal offense, an act of fraud, or if you plan to commit a violent physical act. Pursuant to this, I would like to request both the counsels to not delve into the legal questions of the dispute and to rather focus on facts of the dispute at hand, as this is not in any manner a litigation proceeding. Mediation is a party autonomous and voluntary proceeding, which steers off the cumbersome formalities of litigation, especially in a cumbered judiciary like India's, saving both the parties' time and money. Also important to mention, your attendance at this session does not imply any admission of guilt or wrongdoing at either of your ends. You may please inform me if you have any special needs or requirements. Please make yourselves very comfortable. This the setup of mediation is less formal than that of litigation. Lastly, I would like to remind the parties that if this mediation was to fail, the case at hand would be thrown into the jargon of the judiciary. It is in your best interest, therefore, to successfully enter into a bargain here today. I would now request my learned co-mediator, Mr. Advait, to proceed with his opening statement and to elaborate upon the stages of the mediation proceeding and to set ground rules for today's mediation session.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daria, for explaining the essentials of mediation and our roles as mediators so immaculately. But before I begin to explain the stages of mediation, I just wanted to confirm whether the parties have signed the agreement to mediate. Okay, so that is commitment to the essentials that Mr. Daria had mentioned earlier. I'll now proceed with explaining to you the stages of mediation.
Sorry, can I get your name, your the team code and the name, please, so that we can input that? Sorry.
TC10, Advait Raghunath.
Yes. Thank you.
I will now proceed to explain the stages of mediation. There are 4 stages. Firstly, we'll have your opening statements, then we'll have the joint session, then we'll have private sessions, and lastly, we'll have closing remarks. The opening statements are where parties are expected to delve into their background and perspective on the dispute that has arisen. The parties can brief us and the other party on their interests and how these interests have emerged. Further, with the assistance of your counsels, you may choose to delve into the intricacies of these interests. It's important to remember that parties and counsels must not be interrupted during their opening statements unless there is a logistical issue. Based on your opening statements, Daria and I will help you in framing the agenda for today's session. Once the agenda has been set, we will move into a joint session where the purpose is to extract as much information in furtherance of reaching an amicable settlement. A transparent exchange of ideas is necessary to ensure that the joint sessions bring the parties closer to each other's interests. A reminder that we will not be providing you with solutions or evaluations during the joint session. Rather, the onus is on you to come up with creative alternatives. Thirdly, if any party feels the need to express something in confidence to us mediators, or we sense that there is an impasse, then the option of a private caucus can be exercised by either party, or by both parties, or by us as mediators. Each private caucus will last for a maximum of 5 minutes. In these caucuses, we will attempt to address your concerns and focus them towards problem solving. Upon completion of the joint and private sessions, we will have closing remarks. So depending on what or not whether a settlement has been reached, Daria and I will summarize the terms of the settlement, and then they will be presented to you. I hope at this stage, the stages of the mediation process are clear to you. Are there any clarifications you have to be made? Seeing none, we look forward to a productive and honest exchange of information and ideas. Remember to use your right of self-determination. You alone will determine the outcome of this session. We are only facilitators. Think of us as the GPS in your car. It is your car. You will be driving the car, and the destination and route will be picked by you as well. Lastly, there are a couple of ground rules we expect the parties to follow. So firstly, please do maintain decorum throughout this session. And secondly, please do be respectful and polite while addressing it. At this stage, I'd just like to reassure the parties that we as your mediators are here for you at all times. The very fact that the parties have entered into mediation shows that both of you have recognized there are elements of a settlement which can be reached. It is for you to find these elements of settlement and for us to assist you in pooling them together. So I know there are various complexities that will arise, and I don't think we should wait too much longer before your opening statements. Just a reminder, today's session will be for 70 minutes. On the event of a private caucus, that too will be included in the 70 minutes. Are there any clarifications that you have for Daria and I? Great. Seeing none, ordinarily, it is the requesting party who makes their opening statement. So you may begin your opening statement along with an introduction.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Advait. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rai, and I'm a representative of the C company. And Advait, Daria, first of all, thank you so much for taking time out from your hectic schedule to come facilitate this session for us today. We are extremely grateful to have calm and neutral minds who can help us navigate through this chaos. Mr. Menon, I have been an ardent fan of your acting and singing. You can trust to find me sitting in the first row of all your first day first shows of your movies, and this reverence is something that will continue to be constant, whatever be the circumstances. It is extremely unfortunate that we're meeting here in these circumstances today. Whatever transpired between us with regards to the movie, trust me, was something I never foresaw could happen. As a complete novice stepping into this daunting movie industry and being your fan, it was my absolute dream to work with you and to star you in my first ever movie. My intentions in this regard with working with you have always been clear. I understand how frustrated and angry you must have been on knowing about the termination of the contract, and you're completely justified in feeling so. I acknowledge there was a breakdown in effective communication from my end, but I hope you trust me when I say that the only reason behind vitiating that contract was because we did not want to push your health extreme in any particular scenario. We were witness to the struggles and hardships that COVID inflicted upon you, and we simply did not want your health to deteriorate any further, and thought it was best suited at that time to give you the space and the recovery period so that you could come back with a bang. At this point, since we're having an open communication, I must convey the difficulties that we at SSE were facing. We stepped into this project of making this movie with dreams in our eyes, but circumstances just became more complicated and difficult. Our financial situation has only deteriorated with the expenses of canceling international tickets, locations, shoot, and all of these have been exacerbated by the massive delay. Whatever logistical calculations we had undertaken, they were all tossed down the drain, which is what prompted our actions in proceeding with Mr. Rudra. It simply wasn't in our financial capacity to account for more delays. The situation of COVID-19 is most unprecedented, and the sword of another lockdown being imposed at any point of time, which would again lead to the movie and the cancellation of the shoot, and therefore not this movie just being an idea and not being actualized into something somewhat of a movie, loomed large in our heads. I have come here with utmost faith today, and I just hope that today's session can be a blockbuster hit for all of us. At this point, I'd just like to hand over the mic to my counselor, Mr. Rohini.
Afternoon, everyone, and I would off the bat like to thank everyone present here. Am I audible right now? Sorry if I was inaudible. Again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to all the mediators, Mr. Menon and his council, for agreeing to sit for this mediation session on this Monday afternoon, taking time out of your busy schedules. We see the commitment that you have towards making this session very successful. Firstly, I would like to clarify that my position as a counsel to my client is purely in an advisory capacity to help navigate my client the technicalities surrounding this issue. The final decision making power rests purely with my client, and I can in no way take any decisions for them whatsoever. I think my client has perfectly elucidated the difficulties that they have faced over the course of these events that were posed by various supervening events beyond their control. C has always been committed towards taking care of its actors and artists, foster good relations with them in order to establish long lasting relationships with them. It is with this priority in mind that C has been committed to taking the best possible care of Mr. Menon. Thus, when Mr. Menon was afflicted with COVID, my client could not find it within themselves to burden him with the pressure and stress of a feature film that needed to be made in very short time considering our financial constraints. As a production company making its first feature film, time and finances were of the essence, and thus we were not able to even proceed with some of the grand plans that we had for our first project. However, my client was deeply disturbed by the angry response in the serving of the legal notice by Mr. Menon regarding a breach in contract committed allegedly by us. Admittedly, the manner in which the contract with Mr. Menon for Videshi was terminated hastily without proper communication from our end, but it was done with full respect to Mr. Menon's interests and safety. It is my client's primary interest to maintain good relations with Mr. Menon so that we can embark on bigger and more successful projects. What my client needs today, primarily before proceeding with this mediation, is the extent of the compensation that Mr. Menon is seeking from us today and his willingness to work with us on future projects. We trust that this mediation will be successful since engaging in litigation would be disastrous to the interests of either party and would severely damage our relations. Before I proceed to set forth our agenda, I would like to understand what are the topics that Mr. Menon would like to discuss in the agenda.
I think we'll set up an agenda later. If you can complete yours, that would be great.
Oh, absolutely. So the topics that we wish to address in our agenda are firstly, the breach of contract relating to Videshi and the damages that are sought by Mr. Menon, and secondly, the future relations between our parties.
Thank you so much for that, Madam Counsel. If I heard you correctly, to summarize what you said, you have a 2-point agenda. The first point of your agenda is the breach of contract that you allege. The breach of contract with respect to the movie Videshi. That's the first one. The second point of your agenda is to amend future editions, and I believe this is with regard to image rebuilding, PR work. Is that correct?
Future relations would also extend beyond that. It would extend to future projects as well.
Would it? All right. So obviously, PR building plus future projects. Is there anything else you would like to add to the agenda? All right. Thank you so much for that. One point that I also noticed, which is not a part of your explicit agenda, but you want to be communicated, is you want to know the extent of compensation that Mr. Menon seeks in today's mediation proceeding. Is that also correct? All right, thank you so much.
And I would also, sorry to interject, but also his willingness to work with us on future projects as well.
Right, that was a part of the second point of the agenda. All right, thank you so much, Madam Counsel. I would now request the other party, the responding party, to please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction, respected mediator. I am Mr. Naveen Menon. You can call me what my fans fondly refer to me as Thalayaba. A very, very good afternoon. Before proceeding further, I would like to thank the learned mediators for their thorough explanation of the mediation process and entrusting our faith in the same. I would also like to commend the representatives of SEE Terries for joining this session. I really hope that everyone is in good health today because that's a priority, right? It comforts me that we are here despite the testing and unprecedented times thanks to technology. I'm here with a spirit of compromise, and I really hope that we can reach an amicable solution. Now, for the sake of convenience of the benefit and for the benefit of the learned mediators, allow me to canvass a little bit more about myself. In the words of the great Kevin Bacon, if you are an actor, even a successful one, you're still waiting for the phone to ring. Since the age of 5, I have been in love with anything related to acting and films. Coming from an extremely humble background, it was very difficult for me to pursue this dream. In fact, my own family disowned me when I told them about this particular dream. There was a point when I had only 1500 rupees to survive. But as they say, what does not kill you makes you stronger. Fast forward to 2014, I was the protagonist in Mangala, then Porbandar, Bullseye, to name a few. Back in March 2020, when the entire world was shut down due to a mere virus, we all had no idea what was about to come. Within 2 months of the pandemic, my producer backed out in a film I was directing and acting in. I lost 3 sponsorship deals due to severe cost cutting by the companies. I was in a depressed state of mind. But thanks to my family and my fans, I moved on and kept working by making and producing my own films. In the month of June of 2020, when SEE penned down a deal with me for 2 films, I was over the moon. One of the biggest film production companies in India wanted me. I was so excited to work on Videshi, and I felt this collaboration could have been massive for both the Hindi and the South Indian film industry. But when I was infected with severe COVID, the SEE production did not help me. Instead, they went on to replace me with Rudra Kapoor, that too without informing me. I was appalled by their unjust behavior. My fans and well-wishers kept texting me regarding the situation with Videshi. You know, I've always been a huge fan of your production house, and this movie was my dream. Trust me, this was my dream. But today, things have turned out differently than I expected, and here I am in a mediation session with you. I'm really sorry. The entire situation is making me so emotional. Counsel, if you could please take it up from here, that would be great.
I believe
Am
there's
I?
an issue with your internet connection, Council. Please reconnect. Room coordinator may just please be not included in the time limit as well.
Am I clearly audible now?
Yes, you are.
Works? All right. Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to all of you present here. Now, before I begin, I'd like to thank the learned mediators for their meticulous explanation of the mediation process. I'm sure it has helped both the parties to get a little bit more comfortable with today's meeting. I also acknowledge and appreciate the presence of the representatives of C. That in itself gives me confidence that we will be able to navigate through the problem and find optimum solutions that would cater to the interests of both the parties. Now, to introduce myself, I am Vanshika Singh, present here in the capacity of legal representative for Mr. Naveen Menon. Feel free to refer to me by my first name. I extend my heartfelt gratitude towards him for trusting me enough to represent his interests. It is truly an honor, Thalaiva. I am here in an advisory capacity representing the interests of Mr. Menon. It will be my duty to ensure that those interests are not lost or ignored at any given point in today's session. In this light, I would also like to assure that I have the authority to legally represent my client today. However, the final decision will rest with him as mediation is a client-centric process. I believe by office mailed the confidentiality agreements to the learned mediators and C. I request you to kindly respect the terms laid therein. Now, the situation at hand is rather complex, would eventually involve a lot of fine details, but for the sake of convenience and for the benefit of the learned mediators, I will go ahead and further enumerate on the same a little bit more. My client, Mr. Naveen Menon, hardly needs any introduction. He's an established actor, producer, singer, director in the South Indian film industry and is a known face across the country. In June 2020, C approached my client for a two-film deal, which my client happily agreed to. However, unfortunately, during the Hyderabad schedule of one of the films, Videshi, my client tested positive for Delta variant of COVID-19. Even after the 16th day of isolation period, my client was still COVID positive and was recommended being admitted to the nearest hospital for better treatment. For all we knew, the shoot was postponed. However, it deeply saddened my client that while he was in pain, C decided to unilaterally terminate the contract and continued the shooting of the film with another actor without any information, let alone a formal legal notice. Aggrieved by the same, we sent across a legal notice. C's action have severely affected the established reputation of my client, his profit margins, and even his future projects since he had cleared his entire schedule for C. Therefore, looking at the way with which things have transpired from my client's perspective, we propose the following agenda. Firstly, damages arising out of the unilateral termination of the contract. Secondly, re-establishing the reputation of my client. And thirdly, future relationships. On behalf of my client, I'd like to assure you that we will be most flexible and take into considerations your limitations, just as we know you will do the same. Thank you. And before we move ahead with the mediation process, I would like to ask the counsel for C that if I have the permission to approach their client directly in the mediation process to ask any questions. Do I have that, counsel?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanshika. And thank you so much, Thalaiva, as well. I think we have understood your background and your mentality to a greater extent. So your position is a lot clearer to us mediators now. What I have understood, there are three different issues which you wish to discuss today. I have just put them on the chat box. So damages arising out of termination of contract, restoring the reputation of Mr. Menon, and the third being future association. So from what I can understand, the agendas the both parties want to discuss are fairly similar, I assume, and as Daria had pointed out earlier, future association would include public relations as well as future projects. So I think the second issue raised by Mr. Menon can be clubbed with the third issue, whereby the reputation of both parties and future association is taken as a separate issue. And the first being with regards to the alleged breach of contract and any compensation or damages arising out of it. Is there a particular order that the parties would like to follow with regards to the agendas?
I think the order which was set by the mediators is something that we are comfortable with.
If you could get that cut, okay. So that would be with regards to damages and contract first. Okay. So I'm just putting that down in the chat box for your reference. In the meantime, I'd just like to explain to you that as mediation is a client-driven process, as one of you mentioned, it is a client-driven process. So the autonomy over how you discuss these agendas is up to you as well. Anytime you feel like you are not making sufficient progress with an agenda, you can choose to park that issue. For the sake of the client's, parking an issue refers to when you may choose to advance to the other agenda with the help of your counsel. So I'll just put down the proposed agenda on the chat box now, and then you may go ahead. I believe the requesting party can go ahead with regards to the first agenda. You can go ahead right away because I'll take a couple of seconds to start to type it out of the chat.
But before you begin, just a quick point of interjection. I see that, of course, the elephant in the room is, of course, the damages point as put forth by my learned co-mediator, Advait. I think before we begin with the mediation process, it is pivotal to acknowledge whether CTDs agrees to compensation and damages in principle or not. So if you could just clarify that first.
There, I think that is something we will explore through the course of this mediation, if that's something which is agreeable.
Absolutely right. You may please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Starting right off, Thalaiva, I acknowledge all the concerns that you've put forward, and trust me, I'm more sympathetic to the tribulations that you've had to go through. I know how hard dealing with COVID can be. But at this point, I firmly believe that delving on the past is something which is not going to benefit either of us. At this point, we can't afford to go around in circles, and we should look for some constructive solutions. We acknowledge that there was a breakdown of communication from our end. We acknowledge that there was no effective way in which we communicated to you that we are breaking down or reinitiating the contract with you and moving on with Mr. Rudra. And that's an acknowledgement, and that is something we're truly sorry for. And this is something that to mitigate that, we understand the reputational damages that you must have incurred for the same. To mitigate that, we are ready to issue a public clarification wherein we say it to the world, where we make it obvious from our side that there was a breakdown of communication from our end. We acknowledge that the fans, all your lovers, must have been extremely curious about what happened and what transpired between you not acting in Videshi. And therefore, I hope that that is something which helps you mitigate some sort of reputational damages and puts your fans at some sort of settlement. Secondly, moving on to the point of the termination of the contract, I hope you understand that we are a completely new venture in this movie making industry with no sort of backing. It's our first ever film, and we're complete novices in this field. At this point, we were facing great logistical hardships. We're a completely new venture, and the costs that we had to bear because of the sudden cancellation, the international tickets, the shift from the UK location to Hyderabad was something that was too great of a cost for us to bear. So at that point of time, our action of approaching Mr. Rudra was an act of desperation, because we had to balance the act of making that movie and balancing the lead. So if that is something which, Rohini, maybe you could elaborate upon the offer that we have with regards to mitigating the costs and the damages. Rohini, over to you.
Right. Again, just to add on to what my client just said, is that the joint clarificatory statement is that the bare contents will remain as what my client has stated. But if there is anything else that you wish for this joint clarificatory statement to reflect, we would be willing to explore that as well. However, before we enter into a conversation on damages, we need to understand what exactly are the extent of damages that you are seeking from us. If you could provide a clarification of that first, Mr. Menon.
Certainly, I can do that. Thank you so much for understanding my problem as well. See, when we talk about monetary issue, right? SEE, you must understand my perspective as well. From my eyes, I dedicated my exclusive time and effort for your promising movie. Then when I felt terribly sick, you, without discussing with me or even telling me, terminated our contract and instantly replaced me with someone else without giving me a chance to respond. Having garnered acclaim in this field, my time is most valuable to me, which I had dedicated to you. Now, with this unexpected turn of events, I have been left with no work for the near future as I did not sign any other project out of my commitment to you. Because of this, I have suffered major monetary loss. That is why, as damages, I will have to recover certain costs amounting to 30 crores or 5% of the movie's sales or the net profit, whichever is lower. Counsel, would you like to add on to something?
I think restricting ourselves to the first agenda, as my client pointed out, that would be the proposal from our side. Secondly, before we move ahead with those solutions and proposals, and before we, formalize it, I would also like the representatives of the C to elucidate on what were your reasons, for asking sir to join your team project, and secondly, what were your reasons to unilaterally terminate the contract, and also what are your views on the proposal that we have just put on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Counsel. Mr. Menon, we understand the extent of damages, and again, reiterating, we acknowledge the damages that you have incurred. But at this given point of time, you must also understand the logistical and the financial constraints that we are in. So for us to give 30 crores is something which would be too far of an reach for us. At this point, I think the best offer that we can give you is that we are your fans. We've all seen your singing talent. So if for the first movie we signed a two movie contract deal with you. So for the first movie, if we can encourage you and if we can invite you to sing and produce the title track, and for the next movie, that is something that we can of course explore first after Videshi is made, and after that we can explore the extent of damages which can be made after the title track is done. I think Rohini will be in a better position to lay it in a more structured manner. So Rohini, over to you.
Yes, so just to lay it down to you, to crystallize the offer that we have in front of you, is that the we can give you graded amount of compensation on the basis of the profits that we make from Videshi, because we understand that there have been health costs and other sort of costs that you have incurred as you've specified in your statements. So essentially, if we make profits between 100 to 150 crores on Videshi, then we're willing to give 4 crores of compensation. If it's between 150 to 200, then we're willing to give 5 crores of compensation. And if it is 200 plus, if the profits are 200 plus, then we're willing to give 6 crores as compensation. Understand that because we are saying giving these graded compensation scheme to you because of the very fact that we intend to invest the profits that we get from this film into the next film that we have signed up with you already for. Coming to the next part of our offer, which my client has mentioned about you producing and singing making the soundtrack for Videshi, we would love to have you on board in Videshi as someone who produces and makes the soundtrack for the entire film, which we intend to release on our YouTube channel by November of this year, because we intend to release the film in December. So by November, we intend to release the soundtrack on YouTube. And as you're well aware, in YouTube, we do have a large audience, which with 40% of them being out of India. So you would be having a large audience listening to that soundtrack, and there'll be a huge amount of financials that will be streaming in. And we can always delve deeper into the kind of remuneration that you will be getting out of the profits as well. So I hope that this would help you recoup some of the losses that you have made. Thalaiva, if you could please say this offer.
Thank you, Ms. Rohini. I just had a clarification to make with regards to your offer. So I understood that it is a graded compensation method that you wish to follow. 4 crores if the profits of the movie are between 100 and 150 crores, 5 crores if it's between 150 and 200 crores, and 6 crores if it's in excess of 200 crores. Would these profits also be based on the profits made from the title track? Based on what you put on YouTube?
The profits from the title track would be calculated separately. The title track and the soundtrack would be calculated separately, and that we can get into details later on.
Mr. Menon, we'd like your response.
Just before you put forth your views, Mr. Menon, just a point of clarification again directed towards Madam Counsel. Is the title track contingent upon granting a certain percentage from the sale of proceeds from Videshi? Are these two offers contingent on one another, or are these two separate offers?
We would be offering the compensation, the graded compensation either ways. However, we would appreciate if Thalaiva could join us for the soundtrack for Videshi, because he was very committed to this project as well.
Right. So proceeds from Videshi are not contingent upon Mr. Menon's participation in the title track. All right. Thank you for that. Mr. Menon, you may now please go on.
I really appreciate the offer, but I have a couple of concerns that I want to talk about. Number one is, yes, okay, singing is one thing, but I signed this movie to be an actor, and giving me singing offer, first of all, thank you, but I don't think that would suffice to the loss that I've faced. I committed 2 months to this movie. You all know that I'm a method actor. I was practicing for this role 2 months prior to the beginning of the shoot. So technically, I committed 4 months of my time, in which I could have easily earned around 10 to 15 crores. So me asking around 25, 30 crores is not something which is out of your limits. If you don't want to pay me that, I feel a minimum 5% of net profits, regardless of the amount, would be a fair ask from my side, right, Counsel?
Absolutely, Thalaiva. What I, so as in order to respond to the council for C, as you have mentioned and given a data as to how much compensation you will be giving, which is directly proportional to whatever profits the film will earn, right? Am I correct? Now, considering the stature of my client and his pan-India presence, he had wholeheartedly set aside his entire schedule for C and for your deal of 2 films. Therefore, we would, I think, asking for a 5% 5% from the profits of the film is a fair request from our side. And earlier also my client had stated that either you give us 5% of the profit or 30 crores, whichever is lower. And at this state, we cannot predict amount of the profits that your film will, make. So therefore, we will be asking you to consider our request of 5%, standardizing the request of 5% of your of the profit margin. And if you could also please address the questions which I had asked you earlier about why did you ask sir to be the part of your team, and what were your reasons to unilaterally terminate the contract? Thank you.
Point of clarification for Madam Counsel. Your offer of your demand for 5% proceeds irrespective of profits, is that in furtherance to the 30 CR demand, or are these two either or?
Either or.
It's either or.
Either or. All right. You may now please proceed. Right.
Thank you, Daria. Responding to the council, I think we've reiterated this before. Sir, as we've been your fans and we've been followers of all the movies that we've been doing since forever. And given that the script of the film and the theme that it was centered around, we thought it was best suited to have you work with us. But understand again, the idea and the way we proceeded with the termination of the contract was not structured, was not something that was calculated. It was something which we were acting based on our responses.
Room coordinator, could you please take note of this?
Yes, sorry, there is an internet connection. We're just trying to fix that.
No issues.
So, participant, I'll check that.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
I'm extremely sorry for the internet issues, but just continuing where I left. Saliva, again, the way we proceeded in that particular month and with respect to this contract was something which was a result of the circumstances which it arisen. The situation of COVID prompted us to act in a way wherein we were suddenly left at a place where we didn't have a lead actor. We had to finish the particular movie in a scheduled time. And at that point, we had to act on our instincts and get somebody else to finish that particular contract. So I hope you understand this does not come from any malicious intent. This does not come from any calculated motive to have you not work in that film, but just as a result of us being able to fulfill those contractual obligations in making that film. With regards to the compensation, again, standardizing the compensation is something that we wouldn't particularly be comfortable with at this particular point. Understand, as we've reiterated, we're a completely new venture into this movie making industry. And Saliva, you being a blockbuster, you being somebody who is someone who's just worked in this field, you would understand that for somebody who's going into their first film, promising 30 crores or even 5% is a huge amount for a new industry that we are. So if that is something that we can negotiate upon, if the graded offer, if the graded compensation, because that is something we've come up with based on our financial abilities, if that is something you're willing to reconsider, I think Rohini will be able to better elaborate on this.
I think a couple, just adding on to what Rai said, a couple of the logistical issues that we were also facing at the time was there was a possibility that the third wave of the pandemic would hit very soon, and that would again sort of derail all of our production and shooting plans. And needed to commit to releasing this film by this year because we had already set a target of 2 months, which had extended to 6 months already due to delays. Now, coming to the compensation aspect, I understand that there is some sort of deadlock and impasse that we are experiencing at the moment because we do have financial constraints on our end, and we do understand that there are some costs that you wish to address. And I feel that at this point, the best way to proceed would be through a caucus, if that is acceptable to the parties and the mediators over here.
You can arrange for a caucus right now. A reminder that a caucus will be for a maximum of 5 minutes. And if the room coordinator could take care of that, I'd like to have a requesting party first. Room coordinator.
Yeah, participants, the requesting parties will be moved out to the from the main lobby in a minute.
Just a clarification, since we'd asked for the caucus, would we be going first?
I believe room coordinator, we wish to have the caucus with the requesting party, so please move the responding party outside this session.
TC24. Sure, participant noted. TC24.
Hi, if I could just confirm, C24 is the team that has to be moved?
Yes.
C24, you may move to breakout session.
All right.
We can begin with the caucus now.
Welcome to your caucus, Ms. Rai and Madam Council. Before we start the caucus, we would like to remind you of the time limit of 5 minutes. We would appreciate if you would adhere to it. Secondly, we would also appreciate if you could, while pointing out your agenda for the private caucus, also reveal what you want us to mention to the other party and what we are supposed to keep confidential. With that, you may please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tharia. Thank you as well. The reason we've called for this caucus is twofold. One, that the idea about the damages that are being claimed. We think that at this particular point of time, the other party must understand our financial constraints. We are in principle ready to give them compensation, and we've gone on to actively acknowledge that there is some sort of miscommunication that happened between us, and we've taken responsibility of that. If we have stepped this much, we can only function within our financial constraints, and stretching beyond 6 crores is something which is simply impossible for us at this given point of time. Secondly, on the idea of the soundtrack, we think there is some sort of clarity that is needed. We think the just unilateral assumption and the idea that only being an actor is something which is going to reap profits is something that which needs to be deconstructed for Mr. Menon. We think that given that the amount of followers we have on YouTube and the amount of revenue we can generate, given that there are no geographical boundaries and the amount of people we just have as our fans on YouTube, we think the revenue that can come out of that is going to increase manifold, and that's going to be significantly profitable for Mr. Menon as well. Rohini, if you would want to add something.
Yes, just adding on to the last point, understand me. I think what Mr. Thalaiva is missing is that currently CTDs is controlling 40% of the music industry. It has a stronghold in the music industry, and just something that we can commit, we can give Thalaiva huge revenues from the music industry. If he agrees to produce and create the soundtrack for Videshi, then we can commit to helping him garner huge profits from the same through YouTube and otherwise by releasing the soundtrack on YouTube and Spotify by November, since the movie is scheduled for release in December. If those things could be clarified to Thalaiva, I feel that this session could move forward in a structured manner, and I do rely on the wisdom of the mediators to help us arrive at a solution of this.
Had one clarification to make. So earlier in the session, in the joint session, I think Ms. Rai had mentioned that you are willing to negotiate on the graded compensation method. Is that still the case, or are you not willing to push beyond the 6 crore mark? And also with regards, is there a specific manner you would like to structure profits or revenue with regards to the title track so that it could be communicated in a more feasible way for the driver?
Just to this thing, we admit that we have financial constraints, so we cannot offer more than 6 crores in damages to Thalaiva. With regards to the profits from the title track and the soundtrack, the thing is that we haven't worked out the exact financials of it, and we were hoping that we could sit on further sessions to actually work out the details of that. However, we can commit to huge profits can be garnered in crores from the release of the soundtrack.
I'm really sorry to interject. I think if the mediators could solicit this response from Ms. Thalaiva, that what sort of revenue and what sort of profits they are expecting, and that's something that can be communicated to us, we'll be more than willing and more than happy to structure our sort of logistics based on that.
Are you comfortable with stating how far you are willing to go to Mr. Thalaiva?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Are you comfortable with stating your maximum limit of 6 crores to Thalaiva?
Certainly.
So is it fine if we mention that to them in their private caucus?
Definitely.
And we will also mention that the idea of profits from the title track for Vidush. Is that all right with you? Are all your concerns resolved with regards to this caucus? Because then we can take it forward with
Learned co-mediator, I also had 2 points to put forth, if time permits. I see that there is this sort of agreement, slight agreement with regard to what form of compensation is to be provided. So Mr. Thalaiva has said that he wants a 5% proceed, 5% of the proceeds irrespective of the profits that your movie makes. And you are not willing to go above the monetary amount of 6 crores. Now, to strike a deal and to sort of come to a conclusion, will you be comfortable with providing 5% of the profits that Videshi makes until 6 crores? So the amount that the 5% amount should not cross 6 CR, but below that, you will be comfortable with providing 5% compensation.
If that is mathematically possible, then certainly our outer limit does extend to 6 crores. So if the 5% limit fixes and hinges within those outer contours, then for sure we are comfortable with that.
All right. And will you be comfortable if we communicate this to Mr. Thalaiva?
Certainly.
All right. Just to summarize and quickly end this caucus, if both your points are done, you have agreed in principle to compensate. Of course, you're not you're reluctant to go above the limit of 6 CR. Secondly, you want to deconstruct the notion that only acting in the film is going to attract revenue. Of course, this is to be communicated to Mr. Thalaiva. This was a special request on your part. And thirdly, you want a clarification regarding the release of the title track and what sort of revenue is Mr. Thalaiva expecting from it. Is that all, or have I missed something?
That's all. I think primarily just the expectation of the profit cuts, if that could be communicated to us, that would be most helpful.
Sure, sure. Thank you, both the client and the council. With that, we would like to request the organizers to please let Mr. Thalaiva and his council in, and to please escort Ms. Rai and the council to the waiting room.
Hey, just to confirm,
Not
Not audible.
does the team move back?
Mr. Organizer, you're not audible. Your voice is cracking.
Hello.
If I may kindly request this time to not be counted in the mediation proceeding. Thank you.
Yes, participant, the time will not be included in the overall time period of the session.
Thank you so much.
I believe we can start with this private session now. Welcome back to Laiva and welcome back Vanshika as well. So the purpose of this private session is just to clarify some of our doubts that we had. Mr. Daria and I, we had a couple of doubts. And we just would like to assure you that everything that is said in this private session will remain confidential unless you wish for us to express something to the other party. So I would like to first state that Ms. Rai and Ms. Rohini were very honest and open during their private session, and ideally we'd like the same from you as well in this private session. So they had gone on to explain to us their financial concerns and the amounts to which they are willing to negotiate. But first, they wanted some clarity with regards to how exactly you would like to structure your profits and how exactly you would like to structure the compensation that you wish to receive, given the financial constraints that exists on SE.
Okay, so first of all, I need to point out something that I have a huge fan following. So does SEE. My reputation has been tarnished not only in front of my fans, but their fans, their massive audience globally. So I require a public apology from them that could help my image. And if let's say they do agree to this term, I'm willing to get down to let's say 2% of the net profits. From 5%, I'm ready to get down to 2%, condition to a public apology. Right, counsel?
I believe that. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I think Mr. Rajiv, please complete yourself.
In persons to that, Mr. Thalaiva, Ms. Rai has communicated to us that they are not comfortable with providing compensation more than 6 CR. Now, would you be comfortable with that amount, that condition, or do you have another proposal?
See, I feel if you're talking just numbers, right, I would not be comfortable with 6 crores. But when you talk about percentage, right, let's say the movie does well. So they'll earn 200 crores. For 200 crores, 2% is what? Nothing. Nothing for them. 100 crores, 2% is nothing. So I think if we talk percentage, that should be fine with them, if I'm not wrong, because they're earning a lot of money, right?
Understood. There was also a proposal noted by them with regards to the profits made from if you choose to do the title track for the Vidushi song. So they wanted to see if you are willing to do this title track and how you would like to structure any profits or revenue from this title track.
See, definitely title track is something which I would not deny doing. But at the same time, I do feel that my reputation has been tarnished. And also them kicking me out for Rudra Kapoor, it's a massive hit on my confidence. So if they agree, I would want a role back in the movie. I can sing the title song. And if they want, they can condition to a public apology. I'm ready to come down to 2%. Council, am I right?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Am I audible? I'm so sorry. I have some fluctuations in my network.
You are. You are.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, when we come for a mediation on mediators, you would understand that there are two truths to any situations. Now, just like they have their financial restraints, my client have his own. First, and before moving forward, the reasons for the termination of contract are still not very clear to me, since we cannot process vague terms like monetary constraints, as we are unaware about their budget of the film. So for all we know, we don't know at what losses that they stand. Secondly, I would like to propose the following points that my client has put forward, but I would just go and enumerate them for the convenience of the entire session. So my client has proposed that condition to the public apology, he would be willing to join his role back in the film Videshi. Secondly, he would also want the 2% of the profit. Thirdly, he also wants the 2% of the profit that the C has earned from the teaser or the trailer of the film Videshi. And of course, his continued role in the movie would be something that will be very important for the reputation of my client.
Point of clarification for Mr. Salaiva. Do you want to go ahead, Mr. Co-mediator? Right. So you mentioned that you want your continued role in the movie Videshi. Again, just to clarify, do you want the same role of the lead actor, or will you be comfortable with settling for another role if in case there was to be a script modification to include you in the film?
I would definitely prefer the lead role, but of course I have a lot of respect for SEEs, so I'm open to negotiation based on this on a different role as well. I would love to work with them. That's something which I want to tell you all right now. But again, I would definitely prefer the lead role, but I'm fine with a smaller role as well. That's fine.
Right.
So just
And
another
with
clarification.
us communicating this to the other party?
Oh, you can do that, definitely.
All right. Mr. Advait, you may please now.
So I believe that your reputational concerns are of utmost priority to you, and your overall impression of Mr. Rudra Kapoor is also, let's just say, not held in high esteem. So if they were to offer you a joint role with him, is that something you'd still be open to?
Definitely, considering I might get 2% of the net profits, so I would want the movie to do well, right? So I will be willing to work with Rudra Kapoor so that we earn more money. Every single party earns more money, and everyone is happy, right, Councillor?
I just wanted to add here that regarding the joint roles of both the parties, it would be better that our PR vets the script and the legal team sits down to, ascertain both the roles exactly and how much screen time both my client and Mr. Rudra is sharing. And we could also seek a clarification from from C that as to how much percentage of the movie or how many scenes they have already shot with Mr. Rudra.
Right. The time for the caucus has lapsed. I would request Mr. Advait to please summarize the contents of this caucus.
Okay, so we understand that reputational concerns are of your highest regards to this mediation session. So you would ideally like a public apology from SEE, and you would also like, and this public apology will also be accompanied with a reduction from your original offer of 5% on the net profits to 2%, correct? But this is all contingent on the public apology from SEE with regards to how they terminated their contract with you, and also just to clarify the nature of relationship between the two parties. In addition to that, you would also like a role back in the movie, and based on that, you would be willing to produce and sing the title track for the movie. And in addition, you'd also, as Ms. Vanshika pointed out, you'd also like 2% of any profits made on the trailer. So those are the basic demands that you have, but you also seek a lot of clarity with regards to you still have some doubts with regards to why the contract was terminated in the first place. You also have doubts with regards to the budget of SEE, and you also have doubts with regards to how far the scenes have been shot in this movie. Am I right in understanding that? I believe then we can end this private caucus and we can bring back the requesting. Would the room coordinator please bring back the requesting party?
Oh, yes, the requesting party is here, and we can now resume with the session.
Great. Thank you so much. We had a very fruitful session with regards to from both sides. I mean, your interests, positions, everything has become a lot clearer to us as your mediators. And I believe that there are things which both of you are willing to share with regards to the offers that you wish to put forward. However, I think for the sake of the LIVA, they still have some clarifications with regards to what has happened with the Vidushi film. So I believe if Ms. Vanshika could just briefly summarize a few of the clarifications she requires, and then we can take it forward from there, where we jointly uh, put forward the offers you were willing to disclose in public.
Thank you, Mr. Mediator. I am sure the mediators would put forth a revised offers before you, but just to put forth my clarifications that I seek from C. Firstly, we are very unclear about your budget. So in the light of the same, we don't know how much you invested. So we are unable to anticipate the losses that you faced. Secondly, since my client has a willingness to continue to be a part of the film Videshi, we would also like to know that how much of the portion of that film you have shot with the new actor. If you could elucidate upon the same, I think the mediators would be able to, put forth the revised proposals in a better manner. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. For us to clarify, given that there was a disconnect between the shooting and given the abruption there was caused, we approached Mr. Raju very quickly. So for that, now around 75% of the movie has already been shot, because of which it wouldn't be possible for us to now sort of transpose Talaiva into their role. And because of which, that is why in the very beginning, we also clarified that we wouldn't be able to replace Mr. Talaiva now as the lead actor, which is why we're extremely keen on having you be a part of this movie in the form of like directing the song and contributing to the title soundtrack. I think the clarifications, as in the clarity on that, is something that which we will further elucidate upon once we get down to discussing the offer. I think on the budget, that's something that Rohini, maybe you could engage in.
Exactly what aspects of the budget do you need clarity on in this?
Could you please bring the mic closer to you?
I'm so sorry. Exactly on what aspects of the budget do you see clarifications on, Madam Counsel?
I think C is a production house, and the larger chunk of money that goes into making a movie or a series or any sort of art is totally up to you. So I think if you could give us an idea as to how much you invested, because right now we are talking in vague terms on monetarily constraints, And if we talk about monetary restraints, and my client has those same, right? So if you could please address the same in exact terms and conditions, it would really be helpful for my client.
Right. I understand the need for the budget. So essentially, what had happened is that because of the logistical issues that were posed because of the shifting of the locations, because of the pandemic, etc., and Mr. Menon falling sick, our expenses had shot up by at least 30% from what we had previously envisioned so far. And in a sense, what we've right now we're in the process of still understanding the full extent of how much our budget has increased. We have not got down to it. However, we do wish to keep most of that confidential at this point as well, the our budget, etc. And we do not wish to reveal it in this session, if that is acceptable to you.
Fair enough. But from my understanding, the shooting was supposed to be in London. Then it shifted to Hyderabad. So I don't understand how the budget would have shot up. But regardless of that fact, I do want to discuss my part in the movie, which is remaining. I'm fine with working with Mr. Rudra Kapoor, but if you all can clarify on that, if there's a chance that I might come back in the movie, and I'll be willing to sing the song as well. That's fair.
Mr. Thalaiva, before the requesting party goes ahead with their clarification, I would like to clear the air and state that Mr. Thalaiva had stated to us that all his demands of the reduced 2% profit plus a continued involvement in the film, maybe even as a different role, is contingent upon a public apology from CTRs. Now, before we go ahead and sort of get into each of these individual demands, we would like to know if CTRs is okay with issuing a public apology.
I think that's something that we clarified right in the beginning. We're ready to issue a joint clarification and a public apology, acknowledging our breakdown in communication and the fault that we had in that. So if that's agreeable.
All right. Thank you for that, Rai. Ms. Rohini, you may please go.
Of course. So, in a sense, like in terms of the role that Thalaiva would play, I think my client would be much better off clarifying that. But just to give you an outline, the thing is that at this outset, we only wish you to join in for the soundtrack, and I would like my client to further elaborate on that process.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Rohini. Talaiva, what primarily we feel is at that given point of time, given that Mr. Rudra Kapoor has replaced you as the lead star, whatever available roles that we have wouldn't do justice to the stature that you command, the respect that you command. So I think if, in fact, if you could clarify, if you would be okay working in a much smaller role, working in a much shorter way in that particular movie, if that's something you're comfortable with, then that puts our fears to rest, because the only apprehension we have for you to particularly not work as the leads in the movie in the capacity of an actor is that now the role and the screen time that you would get would be significantly reduced as compared to what was offered to you earlier. So if you're comfortable working in a much smaller role, then we would be comfortable having you. If we could gauge clarification of that, and then maybe we could move on to discussing the specifics of the soundtrack.
I think also just to clarify another issue, like I feel that Thalaiva, I get where you're coming from. You do want more screen time. You do want to work on a much better project with us, and we do have the second feature film still in the works right now. We have committed to that second feature film with you, and we would like to actually discuss the details of that with you right now, if that is acceptable to you. Then I feel that your concerns would then be much better addressed through the second feature film.
We can most certainly discuss the terms and conditions of the second film, but my doubts regarding the first film are still unclear. So I would rather prefer that we discuss the first film first. So regarding the small role, right? I'll be willing to do a cameo and a dance, probably an impactful role, basically a small but an impactful role, because I bring in audience. I'll bring in audience. You'll earn more money from my entry, from my cameo role. So I think that will be beneficial to the SEE production. Am I right, Council?
I think you're very well right, Thalaiva. And I feel that the scope of the second movie is beyond the jurisdiction of this mediation right now. So in the interest of my client, I think we should stick to the damages and the reputational loss that he has faced due to the termination that has happened on your part. Secondly, I think I had stated this to the learned mediators as well regarding the role of my client. Even though he has agreed to a smaller role in the movie, it would still be better if we, after the mediation process ends, we would sit together and the PR teams can, verify the scripts and verify the parts that my client would be taking on now moving ahead. Secondly, that is still contingent to an immediate public apology. I would clarify, not a joint statement, but a public apology from your side as soon as possible. So I think that is what our stand is.
Thank you, Ms. Counsel. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I believe that there is an offer from Ms. from Ms. Vanshika here. So you have stated that the public apology is what you need immediately, based on which the very fact that Thalaiva has said that he's open to a smaller role, that will be discussed after this mediation session between both the teams. So first, I'd like to see clarity on whether you are being willing to provide a public apology as soon on an immediate basis.
Definitely, we're agreeable to issuing a public apology.
Might I add, as soon as the caucus ended, we came here and we got into clarifications. However, Mr. Mediator, could you please go on and put forth our proposals that we had pointed out in the caucus? And I say that solely from the interests of my clients, so that none of that gets ignored or missed out. Thank you.
Right. You may go ahead, Mr. Advait.
So I think what your first proposal that you had was that everything would be contingent on a public apology, which has now been accepted by Mr. Rai and SEE. So after that, there was a proposal from Thalaiva that instead of the 5% net profit that they were seeking, they would be willing to reduce this to 2%. However, this would be contingent on that public apology and also contingent on the fact that they would have a role in this movie. And along with that, they also wish to discuss, as you stated already, the nature of the role will be discussed after this session. However, they also wanted to discuss with regards to how they would take part in the song and how the profits and revenues of the song would be taken care of. And now recently, there's been another proposal from Thalaiva that he'd be willing to do a cameo and dance for that movie. So I believe that is nature of the role that has been proposed, although not agreed upon. So I believe we can now get Ms. Rai and Ms. Mohini's response to this offer and what they feel about the 2% of the total net profits from the movie and the teaser that was released.
Mr. I think the elephant in the room now is whether you are willing to forego your 6 CR condition and grant a 2% damages to Mr. Thalaiva, irrespective of whether it crosses 6 CR or not. So if you could just please clarify on that point, then we can move ahead on the role part. Thank you.
Thank you, Dara. I think it's unfortunate, but our financial constraints are extremely rigid in this regard. With, again, this is something we've reiterated throughout the session, with the cost that we've incurred with regard to the first movie, the 6 crore limit is the maximum we can stretch it. So if the 2% falls within that limit, we would be comfortable and more than willing to pay you that. But something that passes 6 crores is something that we wouldn't be comfortable with. And with that regard, I think I have something which might benefit you, Mr. Thalaiva. I think when we talk about production of the song, in production and singing of the song, we think that at this given point of time, we're ready to sell the audio rights in different languages within the South Indian industry, within the Tollywood industry. And we think that along with the social media engagement that we can create through our PR team that is there, that would lead to a lot of profits being generated. So if you're comfortable with us paying you the 2% up to 6 crores and then claiming the further damages in consideration of the benefits that you reap from the production of the music, if that's something that's suitable to you, that's something that we would like to then further discuss upon. I think Rohini can tell us the specifics of this much better. So
Right. I think just to add on to my client, they would be acceptable for you to do a cameo role if you're comfortable with that in the first place. And of course, like the financials from the soundtrack that we're expecting at the current moment is that we're expecting, because of your status, around at least 50 lakh people would be streaming the song on Spotify and Spotify other platforms, especially YouTube. We're expecting the audio rights to sell around, I think, from 3 to 4.5 crore to different languages: Kannadiga, Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, and I think yes. Essentially, considering all of these factors, we would be willing to sort of give you a cut of the profits as well, from the soundtrack, of course, and the cut of the profits would help you to recoup a huge amount of the losses that you have incurred over this period as well. If I could solicit your response on this, Salaiva.
Mr. Rohini, one point of clarification from your side. If I interpret your statements correctly, do you approve of the cameo role as proposed by Mr. Thalaiva? All right,
Yes.
that is very encouraging. Thank you for that. Mr. Thalaiva, you may please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I actually failed maths in 10th grade, so I'm not great at maths. But let's say the movie earns 300 crores, so 2% would be what, 6 crores. So I'm hoping that's something which we can work on. And let's say if the movie earns 100 crores, I get 2 crores. So we win together, we lose together, and that's the partnership that I want with SE Productions, right? So regarding the second offer, I want to ask the mediator if they could summarize it, because I'm not able to understand it properly.
Sure. So what the offer was by Ms. Rohini is that they would be willing to stick to the 2% of the net profits on the movie, and their upper limit on that would be 6 crores. Along with that, with regards to the title track, they're willing to give you the audio rights for this title track release in all South Indian languages. So that would include Malayalam, Telugu, Tamil, and Kannada.
I'm so sorry to interject. I'm really sorry to interject. I was just stating the expected financials through the sale of the audio rights in different languages, and the cut of the profits would be something that we would have to deliberate upon
Discuss.
further. Yes.
The profit sharing, they are open to discuss with regards to the title track in those 4 languages. So if you have any considerations with regards to the title track in those 4 languages, because they believe that it could help you recoup the money that you lost. So if you have any response to this, and the 2% up to 6 crores.
I think that's a very fair deal, right, Council? If I'm not wrong.
I think, yeah, that's a fair deal. However, I would like to reiterate that, first of all, the importance of public apology, and also that considering the stature of my client, and now he's sitting here, a person of his stature, and he's ready to go down to 2%. I think that's commendable, and thank you, C, for offering that. Moving further, I would like to seek a clarification from his counsel that how much of the profit share are we talking about from this title track, given that we need certain considerations moving forward and your word. So if you can please elaborate on the same, because I don't want anything to, for future deliberation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Actually, this was one of the points of deliberation within the caucus in itself, and we wanted to know your expectations out of that. I'm not sure. I'm sure the mediators might have communicated this to you. That what are your expectations? Because accordingly, then we can sort of arrive at a decision. Because we want to know what you expect out in terms of profits from the soundtrack.
See, I feel it's a very gracious offer that you made. But since the offer has been made by you, why don't you tell me how much you are ready to spend?
Just to add on to what my client said, that counter proposal comes in the light of the fact that we are still very unclear about the budget and your investments. Therefore, we ask you, and you're not comfortable in revealing the budget as well. Therefore, we ask you as to what are your thoughts and how much are you willing to give us the cut. Thank you.
Rohini, before you just move on, I think one point of clarification that is extremely imperative at this stage. The movie is still under production, and the costs of whatever cancellations had taken place during the shift from the locations and the signing off of actors, laying off of people is something which is still underway. So it's impossible for us at this given point of time to give a fixed, rigid structure as to what the budget is going to be, which is why we're not very comfortable giving any sort of misinformation to you, and which is why we're relying upon this and insisting upon not revealing that at this given time.
I think we have reached an impasse with regard to the percentage which is to be granted to Mr. Thalaiva from this title track. Again, we have a paucity of time. So just a question to both the parties. Will both the parties be all right if we discuss this particular percentage in later sessions? Because I see both the parties are reluctant to negotiate in this session. All right. That is also very encouraging because we have reached our third conciliation in today's mediation. We may now please take up the further conditions and demands from both the parties.
The parties had already agreed. I think the third agenda was something to do with reputation building and future projects. I believe reputation building has been covered by the public apology to a large extent. So is future projects something that the parties wish to discuss in this mediation session?
Yes, we did. But I was on because Madam Counsel made a statement that the second film would be out of the scope of this mediation. Just want a clarification. Does it indicate that Thalaiva is not willing to work on the second feature film with us that he has contracted with us on?
I think what I meant by my statement was that since we were in the middle of the mediation process and we were not yet decided on the considerations of the first film, so I think now moving forward, my client will be comfortable in working with you in the second film. Am I right, Thalaiva? Would you like to say something?
You're perfectly right. You're perfectly right. So we can discuss about the second film now. I'm open with it.
Thank you, Thalaiva. Thank you, Vanchika. Before we proceed, just a point of clarification for us. Would you, in principle, then have agreed to work with us on the songs? Of course, the logistics and the profits of it are something of a future deliberation, but in principle, do we have an agreement on you working on the title soundtrack of the film, Videshi, that is?
Yes, I do
Yeah.
agree to it, conditional to the public apology and also my small cameo, if that works with you.
Definitely, the public apology and the cameo is something we've also. Right, thank you. That really puts my interest at rest. Proceeding with the discussion on the future course, I think one thing that we really wish to now institute is to bring back the grandeur of the first film that we had imagined. We understand that now with the COVID situation happening, it's somewhat just push water onto whatever plans we had. But the second film is something that we wish for you to feature in primarily, and we wish to institute that on a much larger scale. So what the original film was conceptualized around, that being based in UK and being based outside of India, the amount of the fancy sets that we wish to institute, that is something we want to replicate now in the second film. And for that, we want to seek your consent and, of course, your agreement if you were to work on that project now. I think Rohini has like a better clarification on that. So Rohini, over to you.
Just to crystallize what my client said, essentially the second film would be much more of a collaborative process between both of our parties, because we would like your experience as a producer to reflect in this second film as well. So we understand that you might have certain specifications in terms of maybe soundtrack, in terms of production design, in terms of musical direction and stuff like that, and we would wish that you would also bring that expertise to the table as well. And this would, again, as my client has specified, this would be a much grander project and much larger investments that we're looking into over here, because we'll be pooling all of our profits from the first film into the second film. And at that stage in time, then we'll also expecting much larger profits from the second film that we'll be making. So live out, if we could get your response on this.
One thing about me is that whenever I work on any project, I give my 200%. So signing with SE meant that I was going to give all my 200% for every single film. Now, coming to the second project, yes, I would definitely love to work on that, definitely. But also at the same time, I'm no lawyer, but I would require some sort of COVID clause so that this entire thing does not happen again. Counsel, if you could expand on a COVID clause.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, as Madam Counsel asked us to elaborate more on the production design and music of the movie, I think that is something that we can deliberate on once we are clear with once Saliva gets to read the script of the movie. And also, as far as the COVID clause is concerned, I think we would want to add a clause that says that in a situation if the contract is unilaterally terminated, it would be subject to a 30 crores of penalty. Now, I know that this is something that is very legal, but this would be a primary consideration moving forward with the second movie. Thank you.
Just to clarify, if I may, Ms. Chitra, so this COVID clause that you've spoken about, would expect 30 crores damages in case of unilateral termination, only if Mr. Laiva has suffered from COVID again. Am I correct in assuming that?
You are correct, Ms.
Mr. Thalaiva, if you may please go ahead with the views with regard to what was just said.
I think my counsel very rightly pointed out, if there is a unilateral termination, I would definitely require damages because I don't want the same thing to be repeated again and again. I have a very big image to keep, and this cannot happen once more.
Sure. Rai, please go ahead.
Thank you, Daria. I think at this point of time, if it's comfortable with Talaiva and Vanshika, if it's okay if we don't crystallize on the strict monetary sum, but rather add into the contract a clause wherein if in case there is a unilateral agreement or if there is like an arbitrary decision taken by either of the parties, there is an exigency clause wherein we put in a mandatory dispute resolution clause that if in case somewhat of a unilateral agreement or unilateral decision is taken, there are some sort of damages, maybe 5% of the profits or 5% damages that are given from the film, and a mandatory dispute resolution clause that we add into this instead of committing to a solid, say, fixed amount of 30 crores being instituted. Rohin.
Okay, I mean, yeah, definitely. I don't understand such technical terms, but definitely we can discuss it in the upcoming sessions because all of this just goes over my head. I'm really sorry, but we can discuss it later. Yeah.
With that, if I may interject, if none of the parties have to say anything, I think we are left with very less time, 4 minutes if I'm precise. I and my co-mediator would now like to summarize the proceedings that have happened today. At the onset, I would like to thank both the parties. This was a very, very fruitful mediation session, and in fact, one of my career's most fruitful mediation sessions. The first agreement is upon the joint statement, not the joint statement, I'm sorry, public apology from CTDs for a revamp of course, public relations, a concern which was put forth by both the parties. The second agreement is that Mr. Thalaiva has agreed to take up a small but impactful role in the form of a cameo. The nitty-gritties of which are to be discussed post-mediation. Am I correct? All right. Can I also get a symbol of agreement from the other party? All right. The third agreement was that 2% from the first movie, which is Videshi's proceeds, up to a limit of 6 crores are to be provided to Mr. Thalaiva, along with audio rights and a profit cut from the title track that is to be produced and sung by himself for a person cut, which is to be decided in later sessions. Is that also correct? All right. Lastly, this is my last point. Mr. Advait may continue further. The second film project is to mimic the grandeur envisioned that was earlier envisioned for Videshi. This would include this movie would include a breach of contract clause or an exigency clause relating to unilateral decision to the of withdrawal, the amount for which is to be decided in future sessions. Is that also correct? Can I get from both the parties? All right. With that, I open the floor for Mr. Advait.
Thank you so much, Daria. I believe you've summed up the terms perfectly. Now, these terms that have been agreed upon will be sent to you in writing, and we will need the party signatures to be affixed onto them. And as you have already agreed to another mediation session where you will discuss 4 different things, you will firstly discuss in detail although a cameo has been agreed upon, we'll discuss in detail the nature of role of Talaiba in this upcoming Vidushi film, as well as the script will be discussed in this upcoming Vidushi film. Secondly, the profit sharing of the title track will be discussed in the upcoming mediation session. And thirdly and lastly, the second movie's script will also be discussed, and Mr. Talaiba's role and how exactly the process for this will be discussed in the upcoming mediation session. So at this stage, we just like to reassure the parties that anything that has been shared in this session will remain confidential between all of us. And we just like you to take some time until the next mediation session and think of how far you've come from the original loggerheads that you were at. And this is how amicable dispute resolution can prevent you from deteriorating relationships which need to be saved and help you understand your interests better, maintain relationships with people that you really care about. So thank you once again for the way you have conducted yourselves during this session. It has been an honor to co-mediate this session with Mr. Dario. Is there anything that the parties would like to add as a closing remark? Good brief.
Thank you. I think it was extremely heartening to see how willing Mr. Menon and the council was, and we're looking forward to future mediation. Thank you so much for such a fruitful.
Thank you to the mediators and the parties. We're really looking forward to the further mediation sessions, considering the success of this session.
Thank you to all the mediators for conducting this session so fruitfully. Also, since I'm okay now, once all of this gets over, we all should party Thalaiva style.
Thank you so much, mediators. Thank you so much, the representatives of C. I think we couldn't be more happier with the outcome of the mediation process. And I think once the process gets over, I can sit down with the council for C and we can discuss the documents and how we have to proceed with the new altered contract of the second movie. Thank you so much.
Participants, the round is now over and the participants are requested to please stop speaking. Thank you, participants, for this enriching session. Now, I request the assessors and all the participants to please switch the camera on for a mandatory screenshot for official purposes.
So sorry, but I'm unable to start my video right now. I'm trying, but still, there's some issue of we cannot recommend that you allow your camera to. I'm sorry, I'm not able to join. I cannot start my video. I'm so sorry.
It's okay, ma'am.
We'll be moving the assessors into the separate chamber for scoring, and we have a feedback session. Post
Okay. Now am I visible? Not audible. Sorry, visible.
Yes, ma'am, you are visible, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. The participants are requested to remain in the main lobby itself. The assessors are being moved to a breakout room for the purpose of scoring.
Closing की भी story.
Very good evening to everyone present here. I hereby welcome you all to the closing ceremony of the 4th RGNUL Sports and Entertainment Law Mediation Competition 2022. This ceremony marks the end of 3 days of thrilling, innovative discussions and findings of solutions to different problems posed to the participants over the course of 6 rounds of mediation. We were amazed at the skill level and poise exhibited by all of the participants. Even though the competition was organized virtually, the success of this contribution is attributed to our faculty, partners, and sponsors of the competition who made this possible in these times. We are also very thankful to the participants, assessors for being cooperative and extremely patient throughout the competition, making our job infinitely easy. In the fourth edition of the competition, we had 30 teams from more than 20 plus universities amicably negotiating their way to the top. We were also joined over by 50 assessors comprising of professionals and academicians from all around India. The event was organized in association with the Peacekeeping and Conflict Resolution Team Pact, with Creda Legal as our chief advisory organization, Markanda Advocates as our chief knowledge partner, EBC, SCC, Sarvada Legal as our knowledge partners. With that being said, I would now like to invite Dr. Naresh Kumar Vats, Registrar at Rajiv Gandhi National University of Law, to welcome our guests. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dania, and very good afternoon to all the participants and learned colleagues, student coordinators, faculty coordinators, and the team for the CADR. I'm very glad to learn that the 3-day national program for the sports and entertainment mediation competition, it has reached to the very fruitful conclusion, continuing from the 23rd of April until today concluded very well by participating the 29th the team, and we can understand with the emerging trend in the mediation, it has playing very vital role in this respect. The participation from across country, the national law universities and the colleges pertaining to the sports and the entertainment laws. Each day, the very experts has evaluated regressively, and the participants have participated very keenly. The problems were rooted in the contemporary times, taking the inspiration from the pandemic which engulfed the world across the countries, across the nation, and the entire world. The competition was organized in association with the PACT, Peacekeeping and the Conflict Resolution Team as a co-organizer, the Creda Legal as our chief advisor organization, Markanda Associates as our chief knowledge partner, further the SCC online, EBC Reader, Sarvada Legal also spotted in a competition as our knowledge partner. Fourth edition of RGNUL Sports and Entertainment Mediation Competition built on its success last year by having the round expertly assessed by eminent personalities from the fraternity, including the Ami Dharamshi, Vidushpat Singhania, and the Rima Soni Abhishek Anand et al. Ami Dharamsi, founder the boutique from the firm Dialogue, then has reached the experience in the field of mediation and the conflict management. Ms. Ami has been the ardent supporter of the private mediation and dedicatedly towards its promotion. Vidushi Singhania, considering a luminary in the field of sports law, managing partner, Creda Legal, member of election oversight panel, World Athletes, and a member of appeal panel, World Sailing. We wish that in future too, the academy, they remain as academy partner and the advisories, and consider that many more activities as in turn as the courses the CADR will be pursuing ahead for the benefit of the academics as well as the profession. And I hope everybody has participated very well, immaterial, the winner or the loser, but The main concern is the participation. The participants, those have participated, I consider they all are the winner of the the event. But those have not participated, naturally they are the loser. And definitely I feel that this event will be setting as the successing stone in their academic achievement. And I wish from the core of my heart, from on behalf of Rajiv Gandhi National University of Law, in absentia, the Vice Chancellor, my faculty team, and on behalf of the administration, if at all any kind of the glitch on that part, we do apologize. And I wish, I congratulate specifically the team of CADR students and the student coordinator, faculty and the faculty coordinator for its success. Good day. Take care of yourself. Do well in your academics. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, sir, for your address. With that being said, I would like to share with you all that the final round of this competition was assisted by Mr. Abhishek Anand, partner and co-founder at Sarvada Legal, Ms. Amy Darshami, conflict management professional and private mediator at Dialogue 10, Ms. Reema Soni, advocate at Markanda Advocates Chandigarh, Mr. Vidushpat Singhania, co-founder and managing partner at Krida Legal. The competition had awards in the following categories: the winning negotiation team, the runners-up negotiation team, the winning mediator, the runners-up mediator, best mediation plan of the preliminary rounds, best negotiation team of the preliminary rounds, and the best mediator of the preliminary rounds. I hope all the participants are looking forward to the results of the competition. But before that, I would like to call upon Mr. Nishant Laroya, founder at PACT, our co-organizers, to deliver an address. Over to you, sir.
With the price distribution.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. I would now like to hand over it to our convener, Ms. Jannadeep, to announce the much awaited results of the competition. Over to you, ma'am. We are currently facing some technical issues. Thank you so much for your patience.
Hello, everyone. I believe Mr. Nishant from PACT has joined, and I welcome him to deliver an address as the founder of PACT, our co-organizer for the fourth edition of the SEMC. Mr. Laroya, the virtual dais is yours.
Thank you very much, Kushal and team. Apologies uh, as you all would have noticed, even during the competition rounds, technology can get difficult at times to handle, but we need to deal with it. Thank you all the participants for being present here. PACT has been associated with the RGNUL competition since its inception, and my gratitude to the Vice Chancellor, the Registrar, Sir Professor Gurman, and the entire team. It's interesting that when we started out in 2017 as a training and education organization, there were about 4 or 5 mediation competitions in India that ran at that point in time, and now there are almost 32 of them in different parts of the country. So mediation is something that is growing, and at that point in time, we would always say that mediation should be made a subject, even in the teaching curriculum. And a lot of participants or a lot of students in the workshops felt it is a far-fetched idea. And today we have the Bar Council having mandated that we need to have mediation as a subject in law school. So mediation is definitely growing. But there's just one point that I'd like to make out here. Yesterday we were training at New Delhi, and one of the participants asked a question that what is the scope of mediation? Okay, we are doing mediation competitions. We are training ourselves as mediators. What is the scope of being a mediator? And to which I said, there is no scope. So she at that point in time got slightly disturbed. She said, okay, then why are we doing? Why do we do 40-hour programs? Why are we learning how to be a mediator? To which I said, see, let's face it. When you go out into the practical world, when you go out and you practice, either you have white hair or you have no hair. That is the only time your clients are going to come up to you and say, please let us, that yes, we want you to be our mediator, right? Because they feel that, okay, only a senior person can be a good mediator, not necessarily something that I agree with, because mediation is skill-based. If I have the skills if you have these skills even at the age of 30, you can be a good mediator. Psychologists can be brilliant mediators. It's not necessary that only lawyers need to be mediators. But at the same time, we have to be realistic. And our focus, and something that I want you all to take from here today, I want you to take into when you go forward, is that focus on being and training yourself as a mediation advocate. There's a huge difference between a mediator and a mediation advocate. As a mediator, and as you would have seen during the competition, you're a neutral party, trying to facilitate a dispute between client and counsel. As a mediation advocate, you are representing your clients in the mediation as a lawyer. Just like you represent them in court, you are representing them in a mediation center, which means you need to sit with them, you need to strategize with them. The entire process is there. So when you as a lawyer tell your client that I feel that this case is fit for mediation, and instead of going to court, let's hire a mediator and I will represent you in a mediation, there is a much higher chance of them going in for mediation, and that is where the scope is. So every single client that you get is a scope for you. If you tell them that, okay, hire me as a mediator, there's a high chance that they might not, at that point, I'm high thinking that you might not have the necessary experience. But as a mediation advocate, as a counsel, they will be more open to taking up the offer of going for mediation, which is where I say in this country the most important role is to be played by the lawyers if mediation has to become big. That is to convince clients that their case is fit for mediation and take it forward from there. So going forward, now that you know the concept of mediation, you've experienced it, please put focus towards training yourself as mediation advocates. When you're at internships and you sit in for mediations, think as a lawyer, how can you help your client? How is it that you can help your client understand the other party better? How is it that you can help your clients come up with solutions? So mediation mediation advocacy is one thing that I'd want you all to take back from here. And yes, at PACT we do hold quite a few training programs, summer schools, competitions, where you can come and brush up your skills. As a matter of fact, one of the competition that we did again in the online setting is the online dispute resolution competition, where you can make cross university teams and apply. So it has got nothing to do with your university intra ranks. It is an open competition. Anyone from anywhere in the world can apply. You can team up with someone from another university and come. That's going to take place in September. So to brush up your skills, continue going for as many competitions as you can, and see how you can train yourself as a mediation advocate. Once again, thank you so much for taking part in this competition, and to the entire organizing team that has worked tirelessly to make this happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nishant, and thank you so much for helping us out for this entire competition through this whole time. Thank you so much. So now moving forward with the most awaited part, which is the declaration of results. So beginning with the prize ceremony, the first prize that we have is the best mediator for the preliminary rounds. It has been bagged by SLS Pune, TC10. And the award is that you get a cash prize of ₹1,000 along with a 14,000 voucher, 1 year access cards to ABC Learning. Moving on to the second award, which is for the best negotiating team in the preliminary rounds. And it is backed by TC24, Symbiosis Law School, Pune, Tarish Khanna and Vanshika Singh. And your award is that you get a cash prize of ₹2,000 along with one academic subscription to SEC Online Web Edition worth ₹27,000. Then we have the runners-up mediation for the competition, which was backed by Jindal Within Law School, Naresh. The prize is that you get a cash prize of ₹7,500 plus a 14,000 voucher. It's a 1 year access card to ABC Learning. Then we have the best mediator for the competition, which is TC10, Advait Raghunath, Symbiosis Law School, Pune. Congratulations. You get a cash prize of ₹10,000 along with a 27,000 voucher. It's a 1 year academic subscription to SEC Online. Then we have the runners-up negotiating team for this competition, which has been backed by TC24, Symbiosis Law School, Pune, Tarish Khanna and Lumini Roy. And your prize money for the same is you get a cash prize of ₹15,000 along with a 27,000 1 year academic subscription voucher. Then the most awaited one, of course, is Best Negotiating Team, TC15, National Law School, Odisha. You get a cash prize of ₹20,000 plus 2 internship slots at Sarvada Legal, Delhi. And we are more than thankful to all of you for participating, and congratulations to all the winners, from winning teams to all the mediators and all the winners of the preliminary rounds. And at last, I would like to thank all our sponsors and knowledge partners. We'd like to thank PACT. We'd like to thank Markanda Advocates, SEC Online and EBC Learning, and Sarvada Legal for helping us out through the entire competition. And we are most grateful to Creda Legal for being our chief advisory organization, for helping us with drafting of all the problems and guiding us through the entire process. Thank you so much, everyone. And in the end, I would like to thank Center for Alternative Dispute Resolution, all the members, along with our faculty in charge, Dr. Gurmanpreet Kaur, for being the most successful team who can pull out every competition, and for being a very dedicated team Thank you so much. And for all the members who are attending the valedictory right now, thank you so much for being here.
We thank everyone for joining in the proceedings of the 4th RG Annual Sports and Entertainment Law Mediation Competition. We'd love to see you all on our beautiful campus for the 5th edition. Thank you.